Arc Raiders has been, for lack of a better term, coasting off the Cold Snap update and recent expedition resets for a bit of time now. This was a planned coast of sorts as the Embark team took off time for the holidays here the past few weeks, as is standard with any studio or any company. However, now with everyone returning to a normal work schedule across the industry, we're starting to gear up for what is next, and one of the biggest things that is next is a much needed update for various aspects and elements of the game. From balance to security, we're taking a look at what's been addressed, what you should know is coming, and when you could potentially expect to see it here in this video. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content. I'd love to have in the community, but for now, let's get into it. First, let's start out with some game balance here. Obviously, game balance is crucial in any game, but when it comes to Arc Raiders, a clear meta per se has been defined over the last few weeks. Trigger nades for explosives, things like Stitchers and Kettles for PvP, your cheaper weapons to craft being some of the best, if not the best options in PvP, depending on what situation you're in, and then, in some cases, you'll also see some of that being exploited a bit further with things like macros, allowing for faster than intended fire rates on things like those Kettles. Now, it's been something that, as we'll touch on in a moment, when we talk about the anti-cheat update, it's something that, depending on your playstyle, you may or may not experience this kind of stuff at all. If you're more casual and PvE, we won't see the grenade spam or a ton of PvP meta, but if you do, it's probably all you see. So some of these things genuinely problematic, some things perhaps more annoyances. Either way, they've been addressed by Embark. Multiple community managers have posted in their Discord as of recently, saying things like the team's looking into some nerfs, including trigger nades. Keep an eye on #game announcements for updates, that being the Discord channel in which they're posting these to. Another saying the team is working on it in relation to the question of Kettle macros being fixed. And hey, the holidays delayed things a bit, but the dev team wants you to know that we're looking into balance, for example, the Stitcher, Kettle, and trigger nade. Rest assured that we hear you and work on delivering a good game experience. Things are just not immediate. So definitely nice to see that all of these have been touched on individually speaking. And of course that we are seeing these things on the radar of the developers for a fix to be coming. So I guess the bigger question is this good to see all of these adjusted? Personally, I'm on board with these types of changes. While we don't have specifics of how these will be adjusted just yet, it's nice to see those things that are about to be shaken up. While I love the Kettle and the Stitcher, I love that they can be viable, it's also a bit odd to sometimes consider that those cheapest to craft weapons and upgrade weapons can outclass about 90% of the other weapons for PvP experiences out there, right? Like if you find these super rare, expensive on paper, but great weapons, but still lose to the basics, it's a bit of a system shock to that value of the loot, almost making that sort of epic and legendary tag associated with them, and the time that you spent to find those blueprints or to craft those items a bit more arbitrary and pointless feeling. While I think that there's a place for them to all be viable weapons, and I believe they all should be, I don't know that it should be at the detriment of the looting and crafting experience as well, trying to find the balance of everything here that makes everything viable, not necessarily just one-sided, but it's also a balance that's a tough one to strike. I certainly don't envy the teams trying to make this a perfect experience for everyone, nor do I claim to have any sort of the answers that could go about adjusting these. But for those that have been playing a lot, perhaps tired of the current meta, it does sure seem like a shift is on the way here in the near future. Now, beyond that, they also did talk about an anti-cheat update. This is something that anti-cheat in any game, it's incredibly crucial. Obviously, you don't want to deal with cheaters ever, but sometimes you'll experience them more in games than others. Like, if Arc Raiders was a free-to-play game, I guarantee we'd see this being overrun by cheaters and seeing that experience lessened tremendously. But with a $40 price tag, obviously it's not as easy to be a repeat offender here as it would be if you just had to simply make a new account. However, that doesn't discount the fact that cheaters exist. They do exist. It's something that you or I may not see a ton, but there are certainly plenty of them out there. However, again, that deterrent of paying for the game again is only a deterrent if something happens to that account initially, which doesn't seem to be happening in some cases. So in a permadeath style game where you lose all your loot that you have on you if you die in an unfair way, that sucks. Now, the interesting part with this, again, with the design of Arc Raiders, is the game experience will differ so much from player to player. That's by design. The mentioned aggression-based matchmaking system that we see, if you're a more passive player, you very likely will never have come across a cheater, whereas the people who play super aggro, they're seeing them all the time. Because if you're a cheater, you know you're not dying in a straight-up gunfight, obviously you're shooting everything to ruin people's games. So with that matchmaking system at its core, separating the two very different types of gameplay, some people are going to see it everywhere, some will literally never see see it. But there's no denying again that it's not something that needs to be handled in a better capacity. And well, Embark finally did chime in on that. Today, a statement was made in regards to the cheating situation, saying, "We've seen the discussion around the topic of cheaters and Arc Raiders. Please know that we are taking this issue very seriously and are listening to and acting upon your feedback. Over the next few weeks, we are implementing significant changes to our rule sets and deploying new detection mechanisms to identify and remove cheaters. This includes updating our anti-cheat systems for improved detection and bans, as well as applying client-side fixes specifically addressing the out-of-map glitch. Furthermore, we are introducing tools for streamers to help mitigate stream sniping. Thank you for the valuable feedback and for helping us make Arc Raiders a fair and fun experience for everyone. Sincerely, the Arc Raiders team." So it's definitely nice to see that this is a sort of three-pronged attack here to this. Not only they're going after cheaters directly with better detection, better banning methods, client-side fixes for out-of-map glitches are obviously a huge thing. That's been there since the very beginning of the game itself in the launch. So nice to see that those are being mitigated. And also the just out of nowhere mention that they're introducing tools to help mitigate stream sniping, which isn't something that necessarily you or I may have a major issue with, but it's also a tool that could be beneficial regardless, because like, yeah, while the big time streamers out there will be having people that are intentionally trying to grief their game, queue sniping with people to try and ruin their experience, it also could happen to, again, you or I. We just may not think that it happens if you decide to hit go live and you're talking to some people here and there. But even if it does not affect you or I will definitely not say no to more measures that can make our experience better in combating some people that are either trying to grief, cheat, whatever it may be. That above and beyond method of something that hasn't even really been mentioned to any degree is nice to see that it's a proactive measure rather than reactive in that sense, where many people may not have asked for it, but it's nice to have. So I guess the next question could be, when will these updates be coming? So far, Embark hasn't really updated the game enough to get a clear, concise pattern down of when we see these types of updates happen, but there are some indicators as to when it could be happening in a near future update. We have two things in particular that do actually have kind of decent timelines that could make sense here, but also have a timer right in front of us. Firstly, the event end. The Flickering Flames event, the update that again kind of kickstarts this process of, okay, we're good with content, we can send people home for holidays. That ends in 4 days in X amount of hours. It doesn't have an actual timeline here for it, but likely going to be an overnight update from Monday into Tuesday, depending on where you're at in the world. As we'll touch on in a second here with Trials as an indicator, these updates fall mainly within the Swedish time zoning where Embark is stationed. So while we haven't, as of recording this, heard anything about what's after the Flickering Flames event, I wouldn't be surprised if we do hear something on this tomorrow perhaps, but it's entirely possible that by removing the map condition of the cold snap and the subsequent content coming along with the sort of timeline-like event with it and the project, I wouldn't be surprised if an update comes along with that to remove that. Hence, we could see a newer, updated game version brought in to tackle these issues. But also we see another timer in the menus as well for a Trials reset. Now I bring this up because there are upcoming trials that point towards a new map condition of some kind called Toxic Swamp, which would require an update and a new game version to bring it in, because we do not have access to that at the moment. We saw this leak a little while ago and not much is really known about it at the moment, but I'd kind of imagine it's a similar situation to the Cold Snap, where too much exposure causes damage, but in a more definitive sectioned off zone rather than just the whole map. But Trials reset bright and early Monday mornings, depending on where you're at in the world for a lot of people. For Sweden, where Embark again is located, Trials reset every 8 a.m. on Monday. But in the States, that'd be 2 a.m. on the East Coast and 11 p.m. on the West Coast. And again, elsewhere, depending on where you're at, like 7 a.m. in London, for example. So while we could potentially see an update at that time pushed out on Monday, if we're bundling it with well, we know we're going to have an update definitively to push this Toxic Swamp map condition, we actually wouldn't see that until the 19th, as that's when that's scheduled to be picked up. Not this upcoming Monday. This upcoming week's trials don't have anything to do with that map condition. However, personally speaking, with the amount of discussion on the last few weeks, I'm also not anticipating this to take that long. So we could see that window of sometime between now and the 19th as when we see this, but that's all educated guesses. It's also important to note that because these are game-altering issues, it genuinely is quite possible that our potential guidelines aren't followed at all, that when it's finally fixed, it could be something that they release it at 3:17 p.m. on Saturday the 10th or the 11th or something like that, and not really adhering to when something makes sense to just kind of slot it in there. So we'll have to wait and see, but there are quite a few updates that are going to be coming here for Arc Raiders, and that's independent of anything that we see in regards to new content even upcoming. That new map condition is something that, of course, we know is going to be happening. Will we see a new map or something like that coming in the near future, a new deck? We don't quite know, but even without that, we do have some impactful changes and updates coming to Arc Raiders. So I want to fill you guys in on that information and let you know what you needed to hear out of this. So drop your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of these upcoming updates? Do you like the sound of them? Not so much. Whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so don't miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.